If you even cared, you'd actually be here.
Tom Holland has once again stirred up the Marvel fandom with some comments about Spider-Man's future, and it's got people asking a bunch of big questions, especially when it comes to Avengers: Secret Wars. And as if that wasn't enough to chew on, we've also got fresh chatter about the Punisher, his new look, and the possibility of him getting the War Machine armor. That's not just any upgrade, it's one of the wildest reinventions Marvel has ever done. So, let's dig into all of that, because there's a lot to unpack. And stick around until the end because this could have huge implications for the MCU's future. Now, Tom Holland is no stranger to interviews, but every time he opens his mouth about Spider-Man, fans tend to dissect his words like they're clues in a mystery. This time was no different. Holland was asked about what's next for the wall crawler, especially since Spider-Man Brand New Day is coming up in 2026. That's going to be his next big outing, arriving on July 31st, just a year after Fantastic Four: First Steps kicks off Marvel's Phase 6 slate. Then, only a few months later, we're getting Avengers: Doomsday in December, which promises to throw Doctor Doom against some of Marvel's greatest heroes. But here's the kicker. Spider-Man's name wasn't on the initial cast list for Avengers: Doomsday. That alone raises eyebrows because it feels almost impossible to imagine an Avengers movie without Peter Parker. He's one of Marvel's most bankable characters, and his presence usually guarantees both box office and fan engagement. Still, behind-the-scenes complications like contracts, studio negotiations, and Holland's own career choices could mean he skips that particular installment. So where does that leave us? The most likely answer is that Spider-Man will show up in Avengers: Secret Wars, which is set to hit theaters on December 17, 2027. That's the movie Marvel has been building toward as the climax of the entire multiverse saga, and it would be strange to sideline Spider-Man for such a massive event. Even though nothing is confirmed yet, Holland's comments are making people nervous because he's being pretty vague about what the future holds beyond Brand New Day. In an interview with Lad Bible, Holland admitted that his main focus right now is making Brand New Day as good as it can possibly be. He emphasized that he's been looking at fan feedback online, trying to figure out exactly what people want from a Spider-Man movie. According to him, he's even been annoying the producers with how much he pushes for the fans' perspective to be heard during pitch meetings. That's both admirable and pretty telling because it shows how seriously he takes his role. But when the interviewer pressed him about the future, Holland's answer was a bit deflating. He straight up said he doesn't know what comes next for the character after Brand New Day. Now, maybe that's him being cautious and keeping secrets close to the chest, because Marvel actors are known for downplaying or avoiding spoilers. But it could also mean that Marvel Studios and Sony haven't actually locked in a long-term plan for him yet. It would be surprising if Brand New Day ended up being Holland's last Spider-Man movie, because he's still incredibly popular, and his version of Peter Parker has defined an entire era of the MCU. Plus, he's mentioned before that he'd like to eventually pass the mantle to someone else, potentially setting up Miles Morales. That could happen in Brand New Day or later, but either way, it doesn't seem like Holland is ready to hang up the webs entirely. Still, his uncertainty has fans speculating about how Spider-Man will factor into Secret Wars. If Peter Parker really doesn't know where his story goes after Brand New Day, then it could be that Secret Wars acts as a reset point or a turning page for him. Maybe it's where he officially becomes a mentor to Miles, or maybe it's the moment when the MCU decides to redefine Spider-Man's place in the universe as Phase 7 begins. Whatever the case, all eyes are on that timeline. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Holland also teased that the new Spider-Man suit in Brand New Day is going to play an important role in the story. When asked if it was inspired by any particular comics, he stayed tight-lipped, saying it could be a spoiler if he revealed the source material. What he did say, though, is that he got to be much more involved in the design process this time around, which he found really fun. That suggests the suit isn't just cosmetic, it might have new abilities or even a narrative hook that ties into the broader MCU events. Because if we think about it, Marvel has always used Spider-Man's suits as storytelling tools. The Iron Spider suit, for example, wasn't just about style, it was about linking Peter more closely with Tony Stark and the Avengers. So, if Brand New Day is setting up Spider-Man for Secret Wars, It wouldn't be shocking if this new suit is part of that buildup. And speaking of upgrades, let's shift to the Punisher, because this is where things get wild. In the comics, Frank Castle once got his hands on James Rhodes' old War Machine armor. That happened in Punisher War Machine back in 2017, when Nick Fury gave him the tech to help take down a rogue nation's army. The result was one of the most chaotic and brutal Punisher stories ever, because Frank's already extreme methods were amplified by Stark's advanced weapons. It wasn't a permanent status quo, but it was unforgettable. Now, with Jon Bernthal's Punisher officially back in the MCU thanks to Daredevil Born Again, rumors are swirling that he might suit up in something similar during Spider-Man Brand New Day. In fact, some leaked set footage shows Spider-Man chasing Frank Castle in a truck, which could hint at him trying to track down stolen Stark tech. If Adrian Toomes could scavenge alien gear in Homecoming, then why couldn't Frank Castle stumble across leftover Iron Man or War Machine suits? This isn't just about fan service either. From a storytelling perspective, Punisher might actually need that kind of firepower. The scale of MCU movies is so much bigger than what we saw in the Netflix series. Street-level gangsters and mob bosses aren't enough when you've got characters like Hulk, Doctor Strange, or Spider-Man running around. For Punisher to stand alongside heroes on that scale, he'd need something that boosts him to their level. And a War Machine suit would do exactly that. Imagine the cinematic potential here. Punisher in heavy armor, gunning down enemies with Stark's arsenal, while Spider-Man tries to stop him from crossing the line. That dynamic would instantly raise the stakes of Brand New Day. It would also make Punisher a legitimate threat to both heroes and villains alike, which is exactly how he should feel in a big-screen MCU setting. Some fans have even gone further, speculating that if Marvel introduces War Machine Punisher, it could eventually open the door to other wild iterations like Franken-Castle or even Cosmic Ghost Rider. That might sound like a stretch, but remember, before No Way Home, nobody thought Spider-Man would ever fight villains from other universes. Marvel has shown that they're willing to push boundaries when the story calls for it. And honestly, Punisher in War Machine armor fits perfectly with that approach. It balances the grounded grit of Frank Castle with the larger-than-life spectacle of the MCU. It also allows Bernthal's version of the character, who was beloved in his Netflix days, to evolve in a way that makes sense for the current Marvel landscape. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.